Good afternoon, Filipi. Filipi?
Yes, that's correct, Filipi.
Awesome. Right, cool. So without further ado, we'll get you straight on here. So we're already slightly behind. So let's put your screen up there, and Brian and I will vacate and leave you to it.
Good luck. See you later.
Okay, see you guys.
It's up to you.
Okay, so thank you again, everyone, for staying here. So my name is Filipi Pires, and I'm talking here from Portugal. I'm Brazilian, by the way. And I decided just share my virtual machine here because we just have 15 minutes, I think, to talk. It's a small conversation, actually. So this is my GitHub, basically. So we can find different projects here. This is Philip86. It's very simple. And here we can find information about me and some projects. So actually now I'm working as a security research at Saporo. Saporo is a company from Switzerland. And I'm responsible for creating attack modules, checks, control checks actually for this product. And I'm not only that, but I'm security ambassador of Snyk and security advocate in different projects. And it's a pleasure once again stay here. And I'm one of the leads of the DEFCON groups in São Paulo. And it's very nice. It's a small community in São Paulo. And the idea is to exchange knowledge with the students. It's a community, you know. And yeah, so here we can find the small web page and about some information about me. So it's a philippipires.com. So we can find here informations, presentation talks, not only DevSecOps, but about other topics like malware analysis, and presentations in English, if you want, and in Spanish, in Portuguese language, okay? And here some articles published by me about some investigations that I made in different positions that I worked, okay? So let's talk our main topic today. And again, just as we have a short time, just to introducing, just as a small informations first, not only talk about the, SAST and DAST, but the point here is to explain. So probably you already heard about this SDLC, Software Development Lifecycle. So probably you already see this picture. The idea here is just to explain more about how you can put in the S in front of this. But not only, if you putting this on the internet, you can see different approaches or different explanations. But the point here, it's very simple. How you can see for the security way for the development life cycle. This is the very simple thing here, and how the tools can help you to increase your security code, security environment during this development process. This is the idea here. So again, probably you already see these, the security, the requirement, design, development, testing, and deployment. This is the cycle, as I mentioned here in the first picture, okay? And the second one here, you can see below the different approach using the security approach, actually looking from the risk assessment. So probably we need to see something before here, like security requirements, security risk assessment, threat modeling, design review, and statistical analysis using, for example, tools to help you, security testing, code review, and so on and so on. Here you can see another picture, very interesting. And you can see here the security requirements that I mentioned. And so when you design this and this security process, it's very interesting. You define those steps. If you see here, you have the main topics here, like I mentioned it, and the developer process here in the first. And the second one, you can see here the security standpoint inside of the development life cycle. This is the key. Just in a theoretical part, maybe not bullshit part, but it's important part. It's theoretical part, but we can use in different tools to help you. Okay, here I would like to just to explain just a simple definition about what is SAST and DAST. Not only that, but we can see more than one. For example, just a simple approach. For the SAST approach is a white box security testing. The idea here is to looking more inside of the applications. On the other hand, you have a DAST, for example. So when you have the application published, so you have an endpoint, you have an API published, so you can run the specifically tools to scanning this if you have some specifically For example, specifically vulnerability. You can use it, for example, for the SAST approach. The idea is to run specifically. You don't need to you don't need to deploy the application, because you will run the specifically tools to executing specifically code inside of this. You can finding different vulnerability inside of this, specifically as a DLC, as you can see here. It means that you can scan, you can run a specifically scanning inside of your code. In this case, for the Dust approach is different, because you've published the application. So probably you have more problem. It's more expensive to fix the vulnerability. You can compare both. Not only that, you have another different approach that I would like to mention. That it's a simple, again, so you can find in different articles on the internet. You have a difference analysis, not only SAST, as I mentioned it, or Dust, but you have an SCCA, like a software composition analysis. So for each library, you can, or if involves actually 30 parts or different components that you can put inside of your code, inside of your application. So you need to looking from this, because many and nowadays, so we using different libraries, different components to increase our code. And many times we using the open source is not a problem. I really like to use an open source, by the way, but sometimes it's not maintained from the community. It's just a simple, the person creating specifically code, and after that forgot the code. So probably this code, or maybe this code, can be vulnerable. And not only that, but you have an YAST, for example, is a mix of the YAST and a mix of the SAST and Dust. And now more, not new, let's say this way, but we have a runtime application self-protection, like a RESP. So when you run you can use it, for example, a specifically agent inside of your application to run, to try finding actually new vulnerabilities. Just to put in this, to clarify all those peoples and putting all those peoples in the same page. Okay, so let's suppose that you can see you have a specifically project, for example, in your locally, or maybe you can use in your CI/CD pipeline, for example. You can if you want, you can here in my repository here, I have and specifically our sec repository here, dash demo. So we can find here many vulnerable codes here, and JavaScript and Java, and Golang, Kotlin, Node, PHP. So it's a specifically project. I will compare two different projects, actually, different approach. So we have here Snyk, an open source version, actually, and I will using another is HackerSec. It's another only SAST tool. So it's a two different open source, just to share the difference. But of course, you can scale more using Snyk, because you have an enterprise versions and other benefits that you can use. But I would like to show you these two different ideas about that. So here we have some specifically vulnerable codes, as I mentioned with you. So we have a different language here, so programming language. We have an API here. And not only that, but you can, after that, or before that, you need to install. So we can see here in Snyk documents, so we can use in here like a guidance to you. So what is Snyk? Probably you know what is, or so if you don't know, you can put it on the internet. So Snyk product, Snyk open source product, probably you already heard. So just click in Snyk CLI, and you can go there and you can install running in, for example, Snyk code scanning, container scanning, infrastructure as a code to looking for your code. Remember the software development life cycle. This is important here. So after you install, again, so we don't have a time to install. I have here, or we don't have a time to go through all those steps in slowly, let's say this way. But so I have here the all files here, of folders, actually the project that I have here vulnerable, as I mentioned it with you. So first I will executing my Snyk Linux in my locally. I will run the code and I will execute the test, simple like this. So this is my main project, as I mentioned it, and as I show you here in the projects. Let's go again here in Filipi Pires 86. You can find here the same project, okay, that I have here in my CLI, as you can see here. Okay, So I just simple like this executing because I will run out the code analysis scanning. So just clicking enter here, as you can see, I set here the path actually because I download the binary here in this specific folder. And if you see here, just to run the testing and finding three vulnerabilities, as you can see here. The first one is median, using password hash with insufficient completion effort. And here is the explanation and the path. If you can see here, the solution using the hierarchic, not only because this is the root folder, as you can see here. So the performance running inside of this folder, and as you can see here, the execution going through the entire path. So here is the real path, as you can see here. So Golang dash API hash u2 hash dash u2 doc go line 23. So of course I could, for example, running here a code to open here in my Visual Studio, for example, in my VS Code, to see what is exactly the line vulnerable. And as you can see here, the information about MD5. Here is another possibility. If you see here in PHP vulnerabilities, it's different in this case. And here is the SQL injection, okay? Not only that, but we can see here in my Snyk dashboard, you can find here the same project, as you can see here, Filipi Pires dash demo. Okay, so if I click here, so I just integration this information with my GitHub, as you can see here the picture. And here it's very interesting because as you can see here, the same information that you see here, that you see in my CLI. Okay, and it's another point interesting here in this case is about the information about the vulnerability, but you have here the full details. If you click here, you can go for the fix analysis. In some case, you have the fix and how you can fix this, like this, the recommendation from Snyk. So it's very interesting here, the explanation. So if you are a developer, for example, if you're watching now or if you're watching after, so probably you don't know much about the security. So here it's a very interesting and good opportunity to learn more about the security. Okay, and here is, as you can see, the data flow inside exactly point where is the vulnerable code, and here's the fix analysis. Okay, so very nice. And below you can see the SQL injection and the same password insufficient compute effort. So we have here the specifically code analysis to see like a SAST, as I mentioned, statistical analysis inside of the code. If you see here, you can see another open source project called HackerSec. As I mentioned, just a comparison. So if I run here HackerSec and click enter here, now I need to start. Yeah, start is another. They will run, if you see here, the same path. So of course, just compare two tools, what should be the best tools, Filipe? Depends of your environment, depends of your programming language, depend your necessity. But of course, you have a Snyk that have more experience when you talk about the security. On the other hand, you have another HackerSec. It's a very nice tools. By the way, I'm one of those responsible for creating these tools for the community created by the security team. It's very interesting. It's an open source, but it's only open source. In this case, we have an open source and enterprise version. It means that probably you have more features and more benefits and more intelligence just because of that, okay? But again, Filipe, what should be the best? You need to test, you need to compare, depends your necessity. That's the point here, okay? So of course, you can see here, if you compare, I'm talking during the last 15 minutes. I need to finish, by the way. And you have a different performance when you run each tools. Okay, remember, of course, I'm running here in my virtual machine and I'm doing the streaming the same time in the same machine. So, but you can see here the differences about the performance. But here you will see the not the same, of course, not the same, but the similar result. Talk about the vulnerability. of course, using different engines responsible for detect is this code. Because in this case, Snyk, you have an own engine responsible for run and analysis the code. And this case, when you talk about the ORSEC, we have a different engine. You have our ORSEC engine. Not only that, but you have another like a GoSec, like others engine inside of this responsible for run and to analysis the code. Okay, so I just wait to finish this simple running here. We don't have a time again to share the manager or other things or to compare other things, but for my point here to share you is the difference and the importance of the analysis that are important to execute in your environment, and how important you know creating this as I mentioned to you, creating this idea. So not this is better. The looking from this process, risk assessment, first security requirements, after that creating threat modeling, designing review, looking from the architecture, and creating the security code scanning, as I mentioned it to you, or statistic analysis using tool to perform a specific analysis here. And not only that, security testing, and in the end, for example, you executing specifically penetration testing in your environment. Okay, so okay, I need to click enter because of that is slow. Sorry for that. I forgot to click enter again. So the question is proceed. Yes, I forgot to click enter. So now it's running the code. Sorry for my mistake here. So okay, I think we can finish here. So of course we'll be scanning here just to show, but we have, if you want, you can see I have other talks in my webpage again that I show you here more details about this, the ORSEC. So as you can see here, the language, the severity, the line. So it's the same, by the way, same vulnerability, MD5, as you can see here, the MD5. So the similar, and by the way, the severity is median. In this case, the severity is low, but in this case, the confidence, if you think about the security and stuff like that, is high in this case. But okay, so I finish here my presentation. So I don't know if the people have some questions. It's a short time, I know, but
I think we have a second. We have a second for questions. I've got one question lined up, and let me put us.
Yeah, thanks, Brian, first.
Thank you. Somebody started with which one is better to start with, SAST, DAST, or SCA, and how do you handle a vulnerability in an indirect library? Which is basically two questions in one. But what is your take on that, Filipi?
Yeah. Actually, it depends of the environment. It depends of the company, and depends of the budget. Many factors, of course, because actually, usually it depends. Because why it depends? Because, for example, if you have a company and you have an application, publish it. Probably you're looking for the dust because you have a product, you have an application, publish it, so you can run the dust after you publish it. So usually you can look in more in the first for the dust, and the second way the team is using the SAST approach because you're looking from inside of the code, and not only the code. Usually you using some tools to help you for the SCA because you looking from the components inside of your code that you need to run for the application, or maybe your application depends of this specifically third libraries or other components inside of your code. So usually it's not a rule, but usually it started for dust because probably you already heard about that. So the company think about security after they start the job. So I have a product, I publish it to the community, I publish it for the market, and after that, I need to prepare some security requirements. Let's see how the code works. So now I need to look in from the code. Oh my goodness! So what I need to do, and that's the point here.
Yeah,
and about the library is basically it's necessary to help to using tools to help you, because in the end of the day is in your applications, publish it.
And I think it's also different per ecosystem. Like in some ecosystem, you can exclude libraries specifically, or you can override them by something. So with vulnerabilities in an indirect library, that's a bit of a puzzle. So But thank you for this. And as always, if you have more questions, feel free to move over to our Discord channel, as you see
Exactly.
the URL over here, and Felipe will be more than happy to help you out with it. Thank you, Felipe, and great talk. And we go on to the next person